Hey, you guys, this is Pastor Morgan here with Rachel Beals hosting our first ever Young Adults podcast. This is our Venture YA podcast coming to you every Friday at 6 o'clock. And we're really looking forward to starting this. We've been thinking about doing something like this for a long time. And what better reason to start it than right now when this is really the only way that we can meet together and interact with all of our young adults. Every week from here on out, we're going to be hosting a podcast just like this with different people. Rachel and I will host it together. But really just to talk about different things that are going on in our world, in our culture, different things that maybe you have, questions that maybe you have. And so even as this podcast is airing right now, we want to encourage you to comment below some different topics, some different things that you'd like us to specifically focus on in weeks to come. But today we have the really awesome opportunity to have a couple of really great young adults from our church here. Rachel, why don't you introduce these people?
Hi, I'm Rachel. With us today we have Bethany and Tony. So Bethany, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for covering the name part. That was convenient. I have been coming to Venture for year and a half, almost 2 years, which feels like a lot longer, and also like I just came to the church, so that's kind of crazy to think about. But I work at a coffee shop in the area, which, thank the Lord, during all of this, we are still open. So that's provided like a very unique opportunity to just be talking to a ton of different people who are all experiencing the same and different aspects of what's been happening. So it's just been very interesting these past few weeks, just dealing with all of that. But
Bethany, you're getting ready to be married, right?
that's true.
Come on.
Yes, shout out to
No big deal.
Jimmy Hicks. It's true.
When's the date? Do you guys have a date?
September 26th.
Okay,
Yep.
come on.
The day before that is a great day as well.
What's
Is
that?
there
Shout
day?
out for my birthday.
Holla.
Do we fast forward that part?
Okay.
We can just cut that out.
Just got that.
Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I found the Lord when I was 19 here at Venture, so in the early stages of my young adulthood. 29 now, so it's been a minute.
Been a minute.
So, God has opened up door after door for me. I started out just, going to Cascadia and doing that stuff. I did Running Start. I was a janitor for a season. I worked at a bank for a season.
Nice.
I was a junior high pastor for a season. And God's opened up crazy doors for my wife and I over all these years. And now we're the youth pastors here. And our job is really interesting because it's a little dynamic. We oversee the youth ministry, but we also oversee a team of young adults too, about 20 people between the ages of 18 to 28. So we're kind of trying to lead both age groups at this moment. And there's a lot going on with the virus. There's a lot we're learning, how different reactions we're getting from both sets of groups, and also being someone who's in that age bracket. So
Yeah, you have a really interesting opportunity because you're not only interacting with two generations, but you're also trying to lead two generations at the same time, which is kind of unique.
Yeah. Feel like the bridge to Terabithia right now. Gen Z to millennials.
Oh, gosh.
First
Someone's
movie
gotta
I ever
walk this
cried in.
bridge.
Kind of on that, both of you touched on what's happening in our world, and that's going to be what we kind of focus our discussion on today, is COVID-19 and kind of how people in our world are responding to it, young people specifically, and how it's maybe affected your life with your own unique positions. So off of that, I'm just wanted you both to touch on how has what is happening in our world with COVID-19 affected your own personal life and your position? So whichever one of you.
Personally, so when all of it started, I feel like just like a lot of other people, I was like, oh, like not a huge deal. Like it's totally fine. Gonna be a few weeks of a little bit of weirdness and then life goes on. And then just through conversations with lots of different people, I was like, okay, like is this a little bit more serious? Like what's going on here? And then over this past weekend when a lot of changes happened, it led me to a place, specifically on Monday, of I got to a little bit of a point of like, okay, this is a little bit scary. Like, what's going on here? And I was in conversation with a few of the young adults in our church about this, and I know that I definitely specifically on Monday, like let my mind kind of go to a place of fear and a place of like, okay, like we all need to be taking this like so much more seriously and like this is kind of scary. And then very quickly was like, wait, like that's not where my mind is supposed to be at. You know, like we have such a faithful God and my mind is supposed to be focused on like he has a way bigger plan than any of us are able to see right now. And there is so much that he can do in this situation, you know?
Yeah. You mentioned that it kind of started off as something that you weren't really too concerned about, and then really quickly it's like all of a sudden it ramped up and you were like, whoa, this is huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like this is the first time that things like this have been present in our world. You know, even 9/11, I mean, that was a big thing that maybe you know, some of you guys were a little younger. Tony, maybe you remember a little better. But, you know, like big things like that happened in our world. Why do you think this seems like so much more of like this huge global kind of thing that's all of a sudden hit our face right all of a sudden?
Yeah. I know, just speaking for myself, social media, like,
Oh yeah.
dang, that has really just spiraled things.
Yeah.
Made me feel like I actually needed to go to the store for toilet paper before. That was like not even a thought of mine. I was like, wait, like, should I actually go? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, I think social media just really like has taken control of this, you know, and like installed a lot of fear into us. Yeah.
You call me an old man, but I really, so kind of part of my morning routine is I read the news every morning, and I still read the Seattle Times, you know, and so I was aware of the coronavirus. I knew it was happening, and I think in my mind it was a matter of when is it going to hit home? When is it going to, because, you know, when it's affecting another region, it's like, oh, we feel our hearts break. Yeah, we're praying. But then I think what most Americans are probably thinking right now, that's great. When's it going to hit my neighborhood? When's it going to hit my region, my area? So my mind's been ready for it, I guess. As a believer, man, I've definitely had fear. Definitely had worry and concern. But I actually think, if anything, I've been just more encouraged and strengthened with my faith in God. I really feel like this is a season where I'm learning more about God through the valley, not just necessarily on the mountaintop. And, you know, like September 11th, I was in 5th grade. I don't remember. I don't remember a lot. I remember kind of being afraid, but my parents really sheltered us from that. So now being a parent and seeing the pandemic, I'm like, my kid has no idea what's going on.
Tony, you kind of have parents in a similar season of life as I do.
Yeah.
So a little bit older, a little bit more susceptible to this. What is that? Has that fear played any? I mean, has that aspect of your family life played any part in the fear aspect?
That's my largest fear. It's always been that, you know, my father has an autoimmune disease. My mom is the caretaker for my grandparents. She's there every day. She's their actual caretaker. So my biggest fear is, oh my gosh, if I get this and I pass it on to my family, like this is going to devastate us. So that's been honestly my biggest fear through all this, and praying. And I actually just having to let my folks know, hey, we're going to quarantine. We're not going to see you for a few weeks. That's been tough. Yeah, it's been really difficult. It's not easy. Yeah.
Bethany, you work in the coffee industry, right? So do you work in like a drive-in kind of stand?
Yeah,
type
I
setup?
work at a specific like coffee stand.
So you're interacting with people every day. I mean, people that you don't know come through, maybe Christians, but probably predominantly non-Christians, secular world, right?
Yeah.
What, you know, just in your brief interactions with people, I know that when I drive through the coffee stand, you know, you have like a little brief conversation with somebody about, you know, whatever's going on that day, the weather, or, you know, like whatever is going on that day. What has your interaction been like with people as they come in through the coffee stand? What have people been saying? What is the sense you get from people regarding everything that's happening in our culture with COVID-19?
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't think I have had like a single conversation with anyone that has revolved around anything else in these past few weeks. It's been kind of crazy. There was one interaction where someone didn't bring it up like first thing, and I was like, wow,
this
is really nice. I even told them, I was like, thank you so much for like not just being super negative about it right away. So that really has just kind of been the theme of just people. It's been so heavy on their hearts. And so immediately, I mean, like, we make coffee, but then we also play therapist a lot of the time. So we've definitely just been dealing with a lot of like, these are all my concerns and worries. And then from my end, I'm like, okay, how can I be positive in this situation? How can I not, you know, come across like there's any fear and that kind of thing? Like, how can I bring a different perspective to all these people who have that heavy on their hearts.
What do you feel like, if you could just like lay it in a couple words, what do you think the general consensus is with the mass amount of people that are coming through your coffee stand?
Just a lot of fear. Yeah, definitely just not knowing how jobs are going to be affected, not knowing how families are going to be affected, that kind of thing. There's just like so many unknowns and just a whole lot of fear from a lot of people. Yeah.
So Tony, you said that, I mean, you kind of are overseeing, leading the youth, but also leading this this generation of more millennial age. How do you see these younger generations of people responding to this?
Savages.
Savages.
I've just, I'm FaceTiming and I'm calling our students all week and just, hey, how are you feeling? I asked one of my boys yesterday, I said, are you afraid? Do you actually understand what's happening? And no idea. Like, really, like, it's just going above their head, almost feeling like they're invincible to this thing. Like, even if I get it, so what? Like, I'm fine. Which has been really interesting. And then you have the other side of the spectrum, people that are over the age of 21, 22, and there's more concern. There's more legitimate concern and fear. And a lot of them now, they're in a season of life where they're like, dude, I have bills. Like, and I think it's not just the finances. People are missing friendship. The young adults that we're working with, they really miss, like, last night we were just in a big text string and they just said, I miss seeing you tonight. It's not as, being online is awesome, but it doesn't bring that level of connectedness, just sitting face to face and being together. So that's been really interesting, seeing how Generation Z is reacting versus everyone else, I guess. Yeah.
And Rachel, you work in a school, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And this has kind of thrown everything off for you for the last couple weeks now, with first, like, students just start not coming to classes, and then, like, the ban on school. What has your interaction been like with parents of elementary age kids, and just like the overall sense of what you're feeling from what's going on in your world in the school districts?
I would say when it first kind of started becoming more real to, like, our area, so, like, probably 2 weeks ago or so, I did not realize or expect any of the reaction that I was going to get. I would say there's, like, two groups that a lot of the parents fell into. Either there was the group of parents that were consumed by fear, like what you were saying, Bethany, and they stopped bringing their kid to school from the moment that it came into our area. And so I hadn't seen them for 2 weeks until now, obviously. So I didn't see them for 2 weeks, even though school was still going. And I normally have 24 kids, and I had like 10 for the last 2 weeks that we had school. So that was a huge, huge thing. And parents were just not willing to put their kid in a situation where there was any kind of risk, which is totally fair, and they're valid in feeling that. It was definitely tricky because I also had the group of parents that didn't think it was a big deal and didn't understand maybe why the other group of parents were keeping their kids home. And so I had like 10 students that faithfully showed up every day. And so I had to provide, as a teacher, material for those kids and the 14 kids that were gone, and had to make both groups of parents feel like I understood all sides, and like not choosing a side or telling them what they should do, and just being understanding. It's definitely more interesting now because we're out of school officially for at least 6 weeks, which is a long time. And I'm a first-year teacher, so I'm already kind of learning as I go, but now this is new for everyone, and parents are turning into their kids' teachers, and like it's just really tricky for everyone, but everyone's kind of in the same boat. But I think when school officially got canceled, it was like, oh, this is like real. And this, I don't know if the fear became more real, but it definitely caused us to take things more seriously as teachers and had to scramble last minute. So it's been a super interesting experience from my end, just seeing how parents are reacting, because they're also a parent and they want to keep their kids safe. So
we need to pray for all the parents out there who are trying to teach their kids Common Core math right now.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know where I would start. I'm like, just carry the one, kid. Just carry the one all day.
No,
But apparently that's not it anymore. I don't know.
Morgan,
I can't keep track.
we don't carry the one in first grade. I'm a first
yeah.
grade teacher.
Okay.
6-year-olds add
Oh.
single digit
Okay.
numbers. They're
Don't
just-
carry anything
They
then.
barely
Just
know
figure
how
it
to
out.
read. Don't carry anyone.
So one of the questions we had is, you guys are both, we all have friends and people who, have a different faith background than us. Maybe no faith background at all.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We can get so caught up in our world and living
Yeah.
within the walls of the church and having this foundation of faith. What if anything are you seeing as a response from people who maybe, from your friends who maybe don't have that faith background? What is kind of their response, and what do you see from them, and what's going on in their life?
Yeah.
What's their view of what's happening?
Well, I'm a 90s kid, so I think a lot of my friends, it's been interesting seeing all my friends that, that don't know the Lord. They're all going back to what we did as kids in the 90s. So, like, I'm seeing people posting on Instagram their Nintendo 64s, and I'm seeing Super Nintendos and Pokemon cards coming out. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have kids. And, like, people doing puzzles and playing board games. So that, and a lot of references to alcohol, so, like, we're seeing, it's really interesting. But what I'm not seeing, which is actually surprising me right now, is I'm not seeing the emotional response from my friend groups, from the peers I have and the people I know. I'm not seeing, hey, I don't really care about this, whatever. I'm just seeing I'm quarantined from home. Here's a picture of me, my dog, and my laptop. So I think I'm waiting to see what's going to be the reaction of the millennial group, the young adults that are saying, what now? Like, what's next? What do we look to actually in all this? I've yet to see someone pose the question, where do we go from here? What do we do? How do I get through this? So I think that's really interesting right now. Yeah.
Well, it seems so natural to, respond to what's currently happening. And I think, maybe even as, I'm trying to think back to when I was in my early 20s, just the idea of, I feel like now I have such a greater perspective of when something like this happens, it's not just for a season. Yeah. It affects everything down the road. Yeah. And, kind of cueing in on maybe some of the disconnect from what this means going forward, for our economy, for our jobs, for, all sorts of different things, what that could mean going forward. But that's really interesting, the emotional disconnect maybe from that. Yeah. Bethany, anything that you've kind of noticed from that? Or
It just has been really interesting to see all the different responses from the older generations to the younger ones and that kind of thing. Definitely towards the beginning, it was like, okay, I'm hearing from everyone else, how do I feel about this and that kind of aspect. But yeah, it has definitely been interesting seeing everyone online and their responses and just at home, chilling, that kind of thing. Or there's just been a whole lot of talk about, okay, well, wanted to go here, had this plan. Changing,
I don't know if you guys
kind
saw
of
that
thing.
video. I don't know who. I think it was CBS or something like that. They posted this video of all these millennials down in Cancun or something like that, but just seriously livid that their spring break got ruined.
It's
I
Fire
did
Fest
see
all over
that.
again, guys.
I was
Fire
like-
Fest 2.0.
I was like, I cannot believe I'm watching this right now. Just so ashamed, right?
Bologna sandwiches.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I'm assuming we're talking about something similar, but similar situation in Florida.
Oh, maybe that's
and
what it was. Yeah.
And so I think I have noticed, and it's kind of similar to the parents of my students, there's two reactions that I see a lot of people having. Either the reaction of complete fear and just scared and keeping yourself in your home, quarantine, or maybe you're just staying home and you're not fearful, you're just doing it to be safe. Or there's the people that, even as young adults, are acting maybe it's not a big deal and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and it won't affect us kind of thing. So kind of on that, we're all Christians, so as somebody who follows Jesus, what do you think our response should be as young people in response to COVID-19 and what's happening in our world? Both, I'm interested to hear your response physically, what should we be doing physically with our bodies, and in our faith, what should we be doing, responding?
You go first. I got something to say.
Thank
So.
you. I would say just my focus has been trying to see what the Lord is going to do in this situation. And instead of following suit and living in fear, really viewing this as like, yes, this is a serious issue and we can't just take it lightly. We can't, run around big groups of people like, woo, not going to touch me. But also, like, how can we turn to the Lord in this? And like, what is God going to do through this situation? So personally for me, physically, that has meant, canceling a lot of events. I also do makeup and have a business doing that. And so I've had to cancel lots of, bridal trials and that kind of thing, which is hard, but the client is extremely understanding, and that's just what's best in this scenario. So definitely taking those precautions, and then emotionally just really going to God and like, okay, I'm super excited to see what you do in this. Like, great. I have more prayer and Bible time now. Like, that's actually been such a bonus of this situation is lots of
attitude.
lots of social events have been canceled. So I'm like, great, have an extra few hours. Like, it works out.
Shout out Bethany's makeup business. Hire her. She's pretty good.
Thank you.
Pretty
Thank you very much.
Good to know.
Small plug.
I think if what COVID-19 has done is it's made us more aware of maybe things we're lacking in our life, actually.
Yeah.
So for me, I think when it comes to the physical stuff for me also ties to the mental health, which I feel like in the young adult culture right now, mental health is something we're constantly talking about. I think now I'm like trying to figure out how do you like do push-ups at home, like and like your dog is like walking right next to you, like how do you do sit-ups and whatnot. So I think still wanting to maintain something physically with my body, and like not because I think like what the problem is like we're stocking up on food, we're getting frozen food and all that, but like it's not always the healthiest. So like you have the option of like making like salmon and veggies, or you can make a frozen pizza. Which one do you want to do?
Totino's.
Come
so
I
home.
think there's that, but I think for all the young adults that are watching and listening, I think our gateway to the world of sharing the gospel right now, like this is it. I feel like the world is looking like we are standing behind the podium, and it's your time. You have the floor. Man, if we could just share God's goodness and share who Jesus is, like this is our window. This might be the moment where actually God opened up a door where we might have not had the opportunity before to just share God's goodness in the gospel. And I think this is it. This is our time to share.
That's really good, man. Yeah, I was even thinking, I had this really surreal conversation with my mom just a couple nights ago. She takes care of Brindley once a week. Brindley's my little daughter. And, she's realizing she's the only care provider for my grandma. And just this realization, like she's got to distance herself from even the possibility of my grandma, getting this thing. And it was kind of in that moment where I just realized like, okay, my physical response is like, I need to help this situation. Like my physical response as a young adult is maybe this isn't going to affect me as much. Like maybe the symptoms of this virus aren't going to affect me as much as it will my grandma. But I play a part in this. Like we as young adults play a huge part in it. It might not affect us as much as the other generations, but we play a huge part in how we control this thing. And I'm all about being a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And I think that's a huge thing that we need to keep in mind from the physical sense is, man, what are we doing to help move out of this? Not just what is our moments within this, but how do we help move out of this? And from the spiritual standpoint, I love what both of you guys said. An opportunity to really like tune in more and like open the word. And maybe, with the busyness of life kind of stripped away, it's our opportunity to lean more in. And Tony, I think you're so spot on just with, man, the lens is on the way the church responds. The lens is on. And we talked a few weeks ago in our Revelation series at church just about, this reality that it's not about what we endure, but it's how we endure it. And as young adults, I just think it's a huge motivation for us to show our friends who might not be Christians, to show our families who may not have the same faith background, to share with coworkers and people who are coming through the coffee drive-through, that there is a different way to respond to the fear that we're faced with than maybe what everyone else is responding with. And so I love your guys' thoughts. Really thankful to have you guys with us today to just kind of talk about this. Mm-hmm. I think the place that I just kind of wanted to land today is just this idea that we as Christians, we're called to bring hope. You know, in all of this situation, we talked so much about fear and uncertainty and just kind of the way that it's gripped our culture. And I think that this is such an opportunity to instill the hope of Jesus into the world. And Tony, that's why I think I love so much about what you hit on there. It's the world is watching the way that the Christians respond.
Can I just say something, Morgan? I'm not saying every young adult watching this has to put a camera in front of their face and do something like that.
Yeah.
Because of my job, I preach messages, I record them. It was really fascinating last night to preach to Instagram Live, knowing that probably only youth kids are watching this, even if that, probably just my mom. And she was on last night.
Thanks, Magda.
But then seeing my young adult friends that don't know the Lord, I received about 5 different messages.
That's cool.
Thank you so much. This really encouraged me. And I'm not saying you have to put a camera in front of your face, but I think the time is now. Let's share, like you nailed it, Pastor Morgan. Let's share the hope of the world. And also physically, if we are now just realizing we have to wash our hands this many times,
Something messed up
there's
with
something
that.
wrong with this
You
world.
Check yourself right there.
Okay, I have just on that. That's so real because I saw so many people saying, if this is the first time we need to do a deep clean at schools, I'm concerned. And I was like, that's very real. But also, I love that you touched on your non-Christian friends too, because I would say even though you might not be like crippled with fear, there's still some fear in the unknown and not knowing exactly what's going to happen or how it may affect you or your family. And so seeing people that have just an immense amount of hope is really encouraging for people with fear. And then that can lead us to pointing to where we're getting that hope from. Even if I'll admit that I am scared of the unknown too.
Yeah.
So even if we're, struggling a little bit with fear, we have a source of hope, which is really awesome.
And I think that's the viewpoint, right? That's the perspective that you have when you walk with hope. You realize that the fear doesn't have to separate you from what you hope in, but the fear can actually push you closer into what you do hope for. And so, again, we want to thank you guys so much for just spending some time
Thanks
with
for
us.
doing
I
this,
hope
man.
that you guys at home have enjoyed this podcast. Again, look forward to it every Friday. Venture YA podcast at 6 o'clock. Next week, we'll have a couple different guests with us as we talk about the 5 love languages and how those play out in a world where we're distant from each other.
Yeah.
And what that looks like for us as a young adult culture. Again, thanks so much. Comment below. Let us know what themes, what topics you want us to hit on, and let us know what you thought of today's podcast. We love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. We love you, and we'll see you later.